Hocus Pocus by Pegasus Rescue Brigade. Chapter 20. Ending. The doors of Princess Celestia's private chambers slammed open with such great force that the marble walls cracked. Ow! Celestia sat bolt upright in her bed, looking around wildly. Her gaze quickly came to rest on Princess Luna. Sister! Luna cried, her royal canterlot voice in full volume. Rise and come quickly! Scorpio has spotted us from the heavens! Before Celestia could even reply, Luna lifted her out of bed in a cloud of magic, and placed her on her hooves. Still groggy, she followed her sister as quickly as she could to the balcony. Luna cast a forelight skyward, as if Celestia wouldn't know where to look. Behold! A crisis is upon us! Princess Celestia stared at the stars. She blinked once, twice, 3 times, and paused to rub her eyes. Luna, all the stars are present, including those that make up Scorpio. Of course they... Luna started, before stopping short and doing a frantic double take. Sure enough, every star was in its place. Scorpio stood at the peak of the night sky. Her individual stars are glimmering brightly. But just a moment ago, she... Good night, Luna, Celestia grumbled, returning to her bedchambers. Luna remained on her balcony, scratching her head. Sister, you know I would not joke about this on a night like tonight, she said, slowly, re-entering the chamber. I swear to you that constellation was not present just minutes ago. Celestia sat on the bed, rubbing her temples in frustration. Luna, I understand that Scorpio's apex is a very stressful time, especially with dark magic having surfaced at the Academy this year. But if anything was amiss at the school, we will have been informed. A royal guard poked his head through the doorway, ignoring the mostly destroyed doors. My princesses, I bring live news, he said, stepping carefully over the splintered wood. There's been an incident at the Academy. The female overseer is badly hurt, and 2 students are unaccounted for, one of them being the filly who caused the fire earlier this term. Celestia's eyes widened. Luna gave her a simple glance that said, Told you so. Better than any words could have. Dinky sat bolt upright, chest heaving. Slowly, the blind panic left her. She closed her eyes, trying to remember what had happened just before. She remembered Scorpio's resurrection and what the evil pony had turned her into. She remembered the fight, then trying to close the portal. But then what? Has she succeeded? Dinky opened her eyes again and realized she was no longer in the crystal cave. In fact, she wasn't anywhere familiar at all. Looking around, she found herself in a small, dimly lit, wood-paneled room. The walls held a few old, tattered paintings that appeared to be cheap reprints of famous works of art. The only furnishing in the room was a low, padded bench upon which she had been lying. 2 wooden doors were on the opposite walls. Dinky looked down at herself and was shocked to see her normal, pale purple coat, instead of the milky black and violet she expected. Somehow, she looked like herself again. Something swung down right in her face in front of her. It took her a moment to realize it was a piece of paper that had been unceremoniously tacked to her forehead by use of her horn, which had shifted when she lowered her head. She tugged the bit of paper free and read the small message written on it in rather messy letters.
To my most welcome guest, when you find this note, I hope you are comfortable and feeling well. I found you lying outside when I went out to water begonias, and figured you could use a warm, dry place to rest. I am sure you are eager to get on with whatever adventures you are in the middle of. If you'd like to do so immediately, simply use the door behind you. It'll take you outside, and I'm sure you'll find your destination after just a short trot. However, I admit I don't get many visitors in a place like this. Travelers here are usually quite bent on completing their journey, and no pony ever has time to stop by. It would be nice to talk to some pony over a cup of tea. If you're interested, come into my study before you make your way out. I dare say I may be able to answer a few of your questions about how you came to be here if you do. If you've no time to waste though, I won't begrudge you for simply going on your way. Best regards.
The note had originally been signed, but Dinky's horn punctured that particular bit of it, leaving the signature unreadable.
I need to get out of here, right away, she thought. Mom and Pop might still be in the others might be in danger.
She hopped up and made her way to the exit, but stopped just before turning the handle.
But maybe I shouldn't just leave.
She realized,
I don't know where I am or what's happened since I fought Scorpio. Maybe it would actually be better if I touched the bone in here, in case it can help me get home.
the author of the note seemed harmless enough. Deciding to take a chance, Dinky turned around and made her way to the opposite door. Unsure what to expect, she tugged it open and stepped into the room beyond. The area beyond the doorway was much bigger than the tiny foyer. Made of the same wood paneling and slanted roof, made it seem like the inside of a small cabin. A few dusty, but otherwise well-kept tapestries, further paintings adorned the walls. Although curiously, they all seemed to be from different eras. Dinky recognized the style of ancient pony societies only seen in history books, as well as pieces that were created within the last few years. A simple stone hearth was built into the wall on the right, in which a fire crackled merrily. A pot of something, Dinky wasn't sure what, but it smelled delicious, bubbled just above the flames. On the far side of the room were several bookcases, stuffed full of various thick books. They showed the same patterns as the decor, oddly. Books from a range of dates that put even the Canterlot Library to shame were filled within. Also against the far wall was an old, slightly uneven desk, littered with more books and scrolls. A high-backed, red-padded chair facing away from Dinky was placed in front of it, although the chair's back obscured them. Dinky could hear quiet mumblings coming from some pony sitting within it. A stallion, it sounded like.
Excuse me,
She said quietly.
Sir, can you help me?
Ah, you dropped by after all.
This voice replied.
Lovely, lovely. You were asleep for so long, I was beginning to assume you decided to set off on your own.
An aura of pale purple magic surrounded the tea kettle dangling near the fire. Obediently, it floated over a teacup on a small table, filling it with hot water. The kettle returned to its hook, and the tea made its way to Dinky, who accepted it in her own aura.
Thank you,
She said, still a little more confused as she sat on the carpet.
So, I'm afraid I'm not so sure what's going on. Who are you, and how did you find me? Are my friends okay? Did we defeat Scorpio? How do I get back to them?
The stallion laughed.
Slow down, kid.
He chuckled.
The danger's past. Just relax and have your tea. I'll answer everything I can.
Admittedly, the tea was soothing. Dinky took a few steps as he sat facing the back of the stallion's chair.
You know to start better than I do.
She admitted, lowering her teacup.
Well, let's start with the introductions.
Her host suggested.
After all, we've met a few times already, but never once had the chance to be properly introduced. I know who you are, Dinky, but you probably don't have the same luxury.
Dinky cocked her head.
We met? Where?
This elicited another chuckle from the stallion.
You don't recognize my voice.
Yes, sounding slightly amused.
How many more times would I have had to teach that bothersome little Retaya your dreams before you remembered me?
Dinky made the connection instantly, and her jaw dropped.
You're the stallion that's been saving me,
She gasped.
I'm sorry. I was so caught up in all the recent events that I didn't even realize your voice was familiar. Thank you so much for what you've done for me, by the way.
It was nothing.
Her horse had answered.
A lovely change of pace, actually.
So, who are you?
Dinky asked, now more curious than ever.
I didn't know I was pony other than Princess Luna, and apparently Ray's get into my dreams.
The art of dreamwalking isn't inaccessible to unicorns that have had the time to learn the complex spells required.
The stallion replied.
And trust me, I've had nothing but time. But enough about that. It's high time I introduce myself.
The large chair was suddenly surrounded by a soft purple aura. Slowly, it turned away from the desk, so Dinky was facing him, revealing the pony within. Dinky took in his features, hardly daring to believe what she was seeing. The stallion had a muted blue-gray coat, and purple eyes that looked old, but still quite alert. Messy, somewhat curly white mane and tail masked the voluminous white beard that dangled from his wrinkled chin, He wore a long, midnight blue coat and comically large wizard's hat. Both garments were decorated with stars and moons, and adorned with more than a few bells. It jingled as he gave Dinky a welcoming nod.
To answer your question from a moment ago,
The pony continued, ignoring Dinky's disbelieving expression.
my name is Starswell. Although perhaps you're more familiar with the name Starswell the Building! We never got a chance to really chat, nor did you even get to look at me for that matter, when we were in your dreams, so it's a pleasure to finally make your acquaintance.
I just gotta say, darn it. Everybody here at the studio, we just lost 500 bits on this bet. We were all betting that this was actually Dinky's dad. Starswell ignored Dinky's stunned silence entirely as he quietly sipped his tea.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Starswell, is the usual customary reply.
He finally said with a hint of a smirk. Dinky gathered herself.
Sorry, she started. But aren't you supposed to be?
She paused, trying to put the pieces together. A look of horror washed over her face.
Oh, Celestia and my dad. Did I die back there in the cave?
Starswell chuckled.
That's a reasonable first conclusion to come to,
he admitted, causing the bells on his hat to jingle as he nodded.
Quite fortunately for you, it's incorrect. You're not dead. Neither am I, as a matter of fact. Not quite, anyway.
His calm demeanor put Dinky at ease, at least somewhat.
I don't understand,
she admitted, cocking her head.
If you're the Starscroll the Bearded, shouldn't you have, passed on more than a millennium ago?
Quite right,
Starswell admitted, nodding sagely.
I very much should have been bitten the proverbial dust long ago, but I didn't.
He shook his head.
Oh, but I'm boring you with the details. You want the relevant information only, so you can get back to where you came from, I assume.
Dinky was very curious now.
I got a few minutes, at least, I think.
Very well, Starswell replied immediately, as if he was finally aware Dinky could ask him to elaborate.
You see, I was a powerful user of magic in my heyday. One of the best, some might say. But like every pony else, I grew old and frail. It upset me. Not because I feared death, but there was so much yet to learn, so many magical secrets to unlock. In my lifetime, I only barely scratched the surface of what magic is really capable of. I wanted more time to dig deeper. So unbeknownst to any pony, including the princesses, I made a decision. A big decision.
He paused to flick a wad of dust from the top of the brim of his hat. Dinky could tell by the sparkle in his eye that he was enjoying keeping her in suspense.
In my later years, I did a lot of experimentation travel to the different realms of existence. I discovered that a plane that separates the mortal world from the state of being most commonly referred to as the afterlife. The spirits of ponies who have passed must transverse it on their way to the final destination. It was an empty place, devoid of anything except ethereal forms, not quite like Equestrian, nor quite like those in the life beyond. The changing landscape is impossible to map or properly navigate. Yet ponies passing through always seem to get where they're going.
Okay,
Dinky said slowly.
What does this plane have to do with you?
I plan to go there,
Starswell said simply.
empty as it is. It's the only place where a pony could continue to maintain a connection with Equestria, without being bound by Equestria's mortal rules. In order to continue my studies over the eons, I tied my spirit to that plane. As a result, I will not be forced along into the afterlife, but I cannot return to Equestria either.
Dinky seemed to understand the implication.
We're on this plane now,
She realized.
both of us.
Starswell nodded, and his horn glowed. A section of the wooden wall suddenly vanished, leaving a wide window. Dinky stared through the glass, into a void of soft, swirling color. At least, that was beyond the simple picket fence surrounding Starswell's yard.
Funny thing, Bartek,
Starswell commented.
I never would have expected it would be possible to bring inanimate objects to this place. But, with a few years of experimentation, I found a way. Turns out even this place is composed of some sort of particles, and some modified conjuring spells allow me to whip up a few creature comforts. Now, I have not only this little study of mine, but a small patch of land where I'll do some gardening when studying has tired me out.
Dinky removed her gaze from the strange sight of the property floating in infinity.
Mr. Starswell, you're so fascinating. But how did I get here?
Yes.
It sounds like what they so expected of you. Only dead ponies come here.
Dead ponies cover about 99% of it,
Starswell agreed.
in actuality. It's more like ponies whose spirits currently isn't housed in their bodies. Ponies in comas and other such experiences wind up here, and eventually they wander either back to Equestria to resume their lives, or onwards to infinity. I guess time will tell which way you'll be wandering, kid?
The stallion fell silent. He and Dinky stared out into the window into the void.
Well, at least I know how I got here.
The filly said finally.
But there's still so much that doesn't make sense. How did you find out about me? How were you able to save me in my dreams? Did you know Scorpio or Artaris? You guys have seen stealing Scorpio away for good?
Easy, easy.
Starswell replied, holding up a forehoof and gesturing her to be quiet.
I can only answer one question at a time. What do you think I am, a wizard? And tell my great-grandnephew to calm down.
Grandnephew?
Yes, Sunburst. Tell him don't mind. Don't mind. I don't mind that he isn't as powerful as I am. Not all my descendants are great and powerful.
Dinky blinked. Starswell's eyes quickly glanced at himself.
Do not do that.
He grumbled, pulling the brim of his hat a bit lower to hide his eyes for a moment.
I'll try to help you make sense of all this. Where do you want to begin?
Dinky returned to her seat on the carpet across from the stallion.
Well, for starters, I'm just one of the thousands of students to attend Celestia's Academy in the time it's been around. You're a millennia-old, ultra-powerful unicorn magical pioneer. How in Equestria did you end up keeping an eye on me in particular from this place?
Well, I think it should be obvious, he replied. Like I said, I'm able to view Equestria remotely from this place. Obviously, the thing that interests me the most is the advancement of magic, and the best place to watch new discoveries unfold is the Academy. By no means are you the first student of that Academy I've watched from afar. Any pony that catches my interest, for good reason or for bad, I will occasionally observed.
Dinky hung her head.
So, you started watching me because you found out I was using dark magic.
She said, slightly ashamed.
Yes, Starswell replied, although, alas, not as early as I would have liked to. I witnessed a fire in the tower during one of my sessions watching the Academy. It's very unfortunate. If I had caught you earlier, I may have been able to warn you in your dreams, before Antares was able to corrupt you enough to create a way into them.
Still, I'm very thankful that you came to rescue me in my dreams, even if it wasn't till later.
Dinky asserted the old wizard.
I just can't believe you really know magic that lets you do that, especially since you were able to make your ways into dreams that even Princess Luna couldn't enter.
Starswell ran a hoof through the tangles of his beard.
Indeed, I was shocked myself when I was able to make that spell function. He admitted, what I've gathered in centuries of research is that dreams occurred in a Retaya realm of their own. A plane of existence just like in Equestria, or the realm we are in now. Indeed, this place may be considered a dream, relative to Equestria itself.
He waited for a moment for Dinky to take this in before continuing.
What's interesting, though, is that we consider a realm of dreams is closer to this realm than Equestria is. In fact, it's sort of situated between the two. That's why dreams can cause physical changes to ponies in Equestria, such as increased heart rate or feeling of relaxation and ease. And yes, that's why exposure to dark magic in your dreams can cause you to use it in Equestria as well.
So, since Equestria is further from this place than the dream realm, is that why you can interact with dreams, but only watch Equestria?
Starswell nodded excitedly.
Very perceptive, Dinky. They teach you well at that school, don't they?
Dinky blushed.
There's still something I don't understand though.
She mid.
Sunbeam, I mean, Antares was able to keep Princess Luna out of my dreams. Has your dream walking magic actually become more powerful than hers?
Starso laughed.
Goodness, no.
He chortled, the bells on his hat jingling merrily.
The explanation is much simpler, actually.
Dinky cocked her head.
How so?
Think of the dream like a simple house.
Starso explained.
To enter it from Equestria is like walking in through the front door. But to enter from here is more along the lines of slipping in through a window or something. It was a route Antares did not know even existed, let alone knew how to close off.
That reminds me,
Dinky chimed in.
you apparently knew somebody was really Antares. Did you know Scorpio and Antares when you were still alive?
Scorpio was around long before my time.
Starso replied.
Antares, though, has been hiding in the darker corners of Equestria for millennia. I met him on my travels ages upon ages ago. The cunning little snake knew who I was, and tried to tempt me in the ways of dark magic. He failed, of course, but it's a pity our duel took place in a remote wasteland. No history will ever tell the tale of Starswell besting the leader of the Raves.
No, but give me about 5 seconds of go-go dogs and I'll get on it. Dinky beamed, which made Starswell chuckle again.
That's neither here nor there, though,
He said.
What matters tonight is the ultimate fate of Scorpio and Antares.
Antares is gone, isn't he?
Dinky asked.
Scorpio's magic has tuned his body to rebuild her own.
A gruesome way to go,
Starswell said with a nod.
and I am pleased to confirm entirely in vain. Your quick thinking, great endurance, and surprisingly strong control of dark magic paid off. Scorpio is sealed back in the realm of stars.
Dinky breathed a long sigh.
Oh, everyone's safe then,
She said.
my family, my friends.
She trailed off. Starswell finished his tea and set the teacup aside, gazing at her curiously.
Everyone except for you.
He asked. Dinky nodded somberly.
Am I really alive now?
She asked, her voice quivering.
Is my pony form gone for good, or can I restore it somehow?
Starswell's expression was tough to read.
The answer to that is not as black and white as you may hope it is.
He explained.
Physically, there's no denying it. Your pony body is gone. Destroyed. You'll be able to disguise yourself as Antares did, but it'll only hide what's beneath.
So, why do I look like a wraith right now? Am I in disguise?
Starswell shook her head.
You are not. This is where the gray area comes in.
For the first time since Dinky's arrival, the stallion rose from his chair. He ambled slowly over to Dinky, his cloak trailing the floor behind him.
Scorpio was quite shocked when you stood up to her after your transformation, I assume.
He said as he arrived at Dinky's side. Dinky nodded.
Well, yeah. She said I shouldn't been able to resist her command. That's why I wondered if maybe I wasn't a wraith after all.
Starswell lowered his head, till his muzzle was only inches from Dinky's.
That's because, at least in the sense that all modern magic has come to understand them, maybe you are not.
He admitted. Dinky raised an eyebrow.
You just said I was.
I said you were physically a wraith.
Starswell corrected.
But it's essentially only your mind that is visiting this realm right now. And I'm sure as you notice, it has manifested as your usual self, in appearance and personality.
But what does that mean?
Dinky asked, slightly frustrated.
It means something very unexpected has happened.
Starswell said, breaking into a mysterious smile.
Until this day, in 100% recorded cases, ponies who become wraith have exhibited purely evil, selfless, and violent tendencies. But then again, in nearly as many cases, those ponies began their experimentation with dark magic willingly. They chose to set off the path of darkness by themselves. The psychological effects of the magic just helped them along.
Dinky made an attempt to reply, but Starswell continued.
Ponies are not designed to wield dark magic. It affects them in negative ways. This is a simple psychological fact. As such, for thousands of years, dark magic has been considered inherently evil. I myself believed the very same, until just a few hours ago. But I suppose the concept of a wraith, who managed to maintain her pony integrity, was never considered by any magical scholar. Unlike a pony, your body is designed to wield dark magic. Rays have full control of it, and simply choose to use it for misdeeds.
Dinky's eyes widen.
So, while before it was a burden to bear, a force threatening to control me,
Now it's a tool, with no more power over you than your normal magic.
Starso finished with a nod.
You've managed to break what's considered a fundamental law of magic today. Dinky, apparently, although you have to be a wraith to do so, it is possible to use the dark magic for good. You saved a lot of ponies' lives with it.
Dinky staggered as if the knowledge was a physical burn.
so you're saying I'm still a wraith, but I'm a good wraith?
Precisely that.
The old mage replied.
You've got a mind sharp enough to understand the tricks the darkness tried to pull on you, and you have such a strong moral fiber that nothing was able to make you stray from your values for long. Those qualities of you remain, even if your body is gone.
Dinky chuckled.
It's funny when you put it that way.
She admitted, nostalgic expression crossing her features.
There was this one line in my beginner's magic guide that always stood out to me. Magic is limited only by the strength of the mind and passion of the heart. I guess that advice holds true even more strongly than I thought.
More than I thought, too. I practically invented that phrase.
Starso laughed.
It has been paraphrased a few times, sure, but the idea was mine.
Nephili grinned.
It seems like you had an effect on my fate for even longer than I thought,
She said. Dinky sat back and down the rest of her tea. Was he finished? She noticed Starso had returned to his chair and was sitting quite still, watching her intently. Even the bells on his hat and cloak were silent.
What?
She asked finally, starting to grow slightly uncomfortable.
Oh, pardon me. It's just that, if you wouldn't mind, Dinky, this whole encounter has left me with a question of my own. Do you have another moment?
I can spare a few more minutes.
Dinky said.
I mean, it's not every day a Schofield gets to talk to one of the biggest names in the history of modern magic.
Starso nodded.
Truth be told, I'm very interested to know what you intend to do next. As positive as our discussion may have sounded, you must understand, you'll likely be facing some new hardships as a result of what happened to you this year. Have you begun to consider how you will move forward from here?
Dinky thought about it for a second.
Well, in some ways, I already have.
She responded slowly.
My friends, my mom, my tutor, they all stood by me, even knowing I was a wraith, to help me fight off Scorpio. They all been behind me throughout my entire fight with dark magic, and I don't think any of them are planning to shy away now. No matter what the future holds, I won't face it alone.
Starso nodded slowly.
Alas, in my lifetime, I was often too consumed with my own studies to recognize the values of bonds with others.
He admitted sadly.
Shame I never got to finish that last spell. Maybe you should tell Twilight to finish it for me. I have realized how much value they have watching do ponies like you, or like your tutor, which also holds the bonds of friendship in high regard.
There was a pause.
Speaking of which,
He continued slowly.
your tutor, Twilight Sparkle, is quite a friend of mine, isn't she?
Dinky laughed.
That's putting it mildly. I don't think there's a single pony in the history of Equestria, save for Princess Celestia, that she's more awed by.
Thought so.
Starso replied, a mischievous gleam in his eye.
She'd be pretty excited if I were to, say, have you convey a message for me.
Of course!
Dinky replied.
She'd be absolutely thrilled. Do you have a great magical secret to tell her?
Starso grinned.
Tell Miss Twilight Sparkle that Starso the Bearded, father of the anthropomorphic spell, first High Mage of the Royal Court of Celestia, and age-old traveler of 3 planets, says, hi.
Dinky blinked twice.
That's it? Hi?
Starso laughed gleefully.
Oh, that ought to frustrate her something awful! He chuckled. You can rest assured, I'll be watching from here, just to see her reaction.
Is this a thing with high mages? That you guys are like the biggest trolls?
Dinky, kid, I trained Celestia. Who do you think taught her how to be a proper troll?
Dinky smirked.
Yeah, the fight. That will be pretty funny.
Starso nodded.
After she's done freaking out, you can then let her know that she's on the right track to making some groundbreaking magical discoveries. And I'm proud of her. Don't tell her that until after she's done being annoyed at me, though.
Feeling that,
Got it.
both ponies continued to grin at the thought of Twilight Sparkle's reaction. After a few moments, Starswell used his magic to turn his desk back to face his desk.
Anywho, I'm sure you're eager to get home, he said. Head out the front door and keep walking. You'll find your way in good time.
Dinky nodded.
Thank you, Mr. Starswell. It was a privilege to have this conversation with you.
Likewise.
Starswell replied.
I'm sure you'll be telling your friends that you met me when you get home. But if I had any pony to talk to up here, you could bet I'll be telling them all about my conversation with the filly. Broke the law of dark magic's exclusive negative uses.
Dinky plus.
I guess that's true. Goodbye, and good luck with your studies.
A hoof appeared from behind a chair as Starswell waved goodbye. Dinky smiled and turned, and trotted quietly out of the study. She opened the front door, and after a moment's hesitation, stepped out and wandered into the endless expanse. Time passed. Eventually, Dinky realized she had exactly no idea how much time. Starswell's little home had long since disappeared from view. It struck her as strange, since the void found herself trotting through it was flat, without any features to obscure a structure. Trusting his advice, he continued to march straight ahead, assuming that sooner or later she would find her way back to Equestria. An intermediate time later, something caught her eye. Even in the distance, she was sure it was the silhouette of another pony. Grateful to encounter anything other than the abstract expanse surrounding her, she began to make her way toward it. The other pony seemed to have noticed her as well. It stopped, standing perfectly still for a few moments. Then, with what seemed to be an air of caution, began to make its way towards her.
It's a coat.
Dinky realized.
He's small. You'd be much older than me.
But she got close enough to make out the other pony's features. She saw something she wasn't expecting. The opposing pony had a very familiar appearance. A sunny yellow coat and orange mane and tail. She stopped walking, assuming an apprehensive pose. Hello? The colt called when he was in earshot. Dinky stepped back uncertainly.
It better not be you in disguise, Otaris!
She replied. As soon as the raised name left her mouth, the colt jumped and looked wildly around. Otaris! Where? Are you with him? Did you come to destroy me? The colt's voice and demeanor were nothing like Otaris' facade had been. Dinky's eyes widened as she realized what that meant.
I'm not with Antares,
she said decisively, making her way over until she finally arrived at the colt's location.
In fact, Antares is dead. He won't be bothering either of us.
The colt continued to stare nervously at Dinky, but he didn't flee as she came to a stand in front of him. Dinky cleared her throat.
Are you Sunbeam?
The colt nodded. I am, but how do you know that? Did I know you? It's been so long since the incident with dark magic. At least I think it has. It's so hard to keep track of how long I've been wandering around here.
It's a very long story,
Dinky admitted, grinning sheepishly.
But what I heard is correct. Antares is the one who taught you dark magic, right?
Yeah, it got me killed, Sunbeam replied barely. And now I'm stuck here. Which is much worse than dying was. Dinky raised an eyebrow.
You're stuck? What do you mean?
The colt sighed and hung his head. The dark magic's like a prison, he mumbled. Every now and again, as I search my way out of this place, a bright light appears in the distance. I know the way to move on, but every time I get near it, my dark magic kicks in and makes its light fade away. It's happened hundreds, no, thousands of times. Sunbeam shivered. Dinky realized she was holding back tears. She placed the forehoof on his back confidently, but made no reply. After a moment, he collected himself and lifted his gaze, looking at her miserably.
Walk with me?
She suggested gently.
I'd like to tell you a story about what happened since your death. Maybe I can give you some insights into controlling dark magic that can help you.
Sunbeam shrugged. Couldn't hurt. The girl fell into stride with Dinky. As they walked, Dinky relayed the story of Antares meddling in her life. Sunbeam was irked to know that the Wraith had been using his appearance, but what really shocked him was learning his death was an event from over 40 years ago. As the tale went on, he gained gradually more rage, asking questions and even adding some input of his own to Dinky's experiences.
So, now I'm a wraith, I guess. But it's okay. I've learned to control the darkness instead of letting it control me.
She said, reaching the end of the lengthy narrative.
Now I just gotta see if I can make it the rest of Equestria understand that.
You're so lucky, Sunbeam said, sighing. At least you'll be able to leave this place. Dinky opened her mouth to respond, but stopped herself when a flicker appeared in the corner of her eye. She turned her head to see a bright light shimmering a short distance away. There was a crackle. Sunbeam groaned as a black aura crept its way to his horn. There it goes again, he mumbled. Dinky watched the light begin to fade as a result of Sunbeam's rogue spell. She stamped at her determinedly.
Not this time!
She announced.
You can beat this!
Sunbeam laughed bitterly. I'm no hero like you, Dinky. Maybe you can overcome it, but I can't. I tried, more than a few times.
You let me help.
She urged.
Work together with me, and you might have a chance.
Sunbeam said nothing. Dinky glanced at the steadily fading light, then frankly back to him.
Sunbeam, please!
The cult looked uncertain. What do I have to do? Dinky let her horn with regular magic and leaned in, tossing a tip to Sunbeam's own.
This is the energy you need,
She said.
It's still inside you, no matter how much dark magic you used. It is powerful enough to push the darkness away.
Sunbeam squirmed, but kept his horn against Dinky's. I can't! I'm not able to anymore.
Magic is limited only by the strength of the mind and passion of the heart.
Dinky cried.
You know what to do. You know how to do it. You just need the conviction to make it happen.
Sunbeam's gaze met hers. Looking into his eyes, Dinky felt like she could see a spark somewhere inside the settling light. The cult cried out with effort as his dark aura strength finally flickered out, replacing itself with a soft blue one. Immediately, the distant light grew brighter, becoming larger and larger until Dinky and Sunbeam were almost surrounded with near blinding light. The filly laughed gleefully.
You did it! I knew you could do it!
Sunbeam went awestruck, staring unafraid at the dazzling light before him. After a moment, he turned and extended a hoof to Dinky. Come with me, he said. Equestria doesn't like wraiths, not even nice ones like you. Just move on with me. You won't have to worry about it. Dinky shook her head.
Sorry, but no. My friends and family would be devastated if I died. I'm not ready to leave them yet either.
Sunbeam nodded. I understand, he said softly. But thank you, Dinky. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I hope the path you choose from here would make you happy. Dinky nodded and waved as the light grew brighter and brighter, eventually engulfing Sunbeam completely. Knowing that she had her own destination on the other side of the glow waiting for her, she trotted off into directions she instinctively knew would lead her home, and vanished into the light. Conditions unclear. Her vital signs have been holding stable but are very low. It's difficult to make any real estimates of where her condition will go. Dinky didn't recognize the voice that was speaking, but she definitely recognized the one that replied. Just keep me up to date the moment anything happens. I can't bear the suspense anymore. I can't lose my Dinky.
Mom?
Although her body felt like it was made of cement, Dinky shifted ever so slightly and opened one eye a bit. Through her blurry vision, she could make out a long room with a high vaulted ceiling and tall windows through which morning sunlight was streaming. Nearby were the shapes of her mother and the police he realized he was the academy nurse. Neither was looking her way. Her mouth felt like it hadn't had water in weeks, but she managed to quietly call out,
Mom?
What is with this channel and me doing fanfics that have hospital scenes? I swear, this is like, what? The 10th time we've done this? My mom's a nurse and I don't think she's seen as many hospital scenes as I have so far. Dizzy's head snapped toward Dinky as she rushed to the bedside. Dinky opened her other eye and blinked until her vision cleared a bit. Dizzy beamed happy tears forming in her muscle-lined eyes.
Dinky! Thank goodness,
she cried, reaching forward to attempt to hug the feeling. The nurse, however, quickly intervened, dragging Dixie away. I know you're eager, Mrs. Doo, she began, but please control yourself. It's not clear yet how badly your daughter is hurt. Dinky gingerly worked a few of her muscles and realized, oddly enough, she didn't hurt all that much at all. This was strange, she noted, considering she had been struck by an explosive shockwave and hurled against a solid wall of jagged crystal. Equally notable, she looked like herself again, not like a wraith.
I'm not that messed up,
she began, turning her head towards the hearse.
Tired and stuff, but not in a whole lot of pain. I can use some water, though.
The nurse retreated to a small room nearby for some water. As he did, Dizzy flew into the main door of the infirmary and threw it open. Twilight! Dinky's awake! Twilight Sparkle teleported into the room in a brilliant flash of purple. Frantically, she hurried over to Dinky's bed, examining her as she would a laboratory specimen.
I miss Twilight,
Dinky said softly. Twilight looked incredibly worry-worn, but she smiled. I'm glad you pulled through that, she reported. Unfortunately, there's a lot you're going to have to clear up with Princess Celestia and me. But for now, just rest. The nurse returned with a glass of water, levitating it forward to help her patient drink.
You don't have to try and do that,
The filly mumbled, nuzzling the glass away with her nose.
Let me sit down so I can drink it properly.
Nonsense, the nurse replied with a snort. It's a miracle you're even awake at all. In the condition you're in, there's no way you'll be able to. Dinky pushed the bed covers away, parted down her body. It took her some effort, hauled herself up to a sitting position, and leaned against the headboard. The nurse nearly dropped the glass out of her aura. Okay then, she said weakly, handing over the wire. Princess Celestia said to notify her if your condition became stable. So, let me make sure that this is the case. I didn't expect it to be so soon. Dinky took a long drink, sighing relief as it wetted her parched throat. As soon as she finished, the nurse began performing a series of simple physical tests and magical scans on the filly, testing movement, checking vital signs, and ensuring her magic was functioning properly and painlessly. Desire, your condition is massively better than it was when you arrived a few hours ago, the nurse mumbled. I'm not sure what's happening, but if you're feeling passably well, I suppose I should summon the princess. Stay in bed, please. Looking bewildered, the nurse tried from the room. She set the glass aside and spoke more clearly than before.
Is every pony else okay?
Every pony that was in the cave is fine, Dizzy assured her. Scorpio didn't seriously hurt any pony, and Twilight shielded us all from the blast. Same for you. Dinky nodded.
What about Honeydee and Scuffle? Did they get back to the castle okay? What about Sparkler?
Dizzy leaned forward, and nuzzled the concerned filly. Your friends are in the next room. We didn't want them crowding around you while you were trying to recover.
I'm feeling up to talking now at least,
Dinky admitted.
May I see them?
Dizzy looked at Twilight questioningly, and the purple unicorn shrugged. I think that would be all right, she said. We need to keep an eye on you until Princess Celestia arrives, though.
Don't worry.
Don't worry, though. We'll step back so you can talk to your friends, Dizzy added. Dinky nodded as the two mares turned and tried to the infirmary doors. Twilight opened them a bit and poked her head outside. You kids can see Dinky now, but she's resting, so keep it quiet, okay? Twilight stepped back, and four foals entered the room. Leading the way was Clarity, who appeared to be applying a great deal of self-restraint to prevent herself from charging headlong into Dinky's bedside. Physically trotted along behind her, with Honeydee and Scuffle walking side by side, bringing up the rear. The moment Clarity reached Dinky's bed, she reared up and placed her forehoofs on the seat beside her friend. Celestia's mane, Dinky, you can't scare us like that, she said. Right after the explosion, we thought for sure you wouldn't pull through.
Clarity told us the whole story,
Honeydee confessed.
I was worried you wouldn't be coming back. Then when your mom arrived with you draped over her back, I thought...
Overcome by her anxieties, Honeydee trailed off. Scuffle stiffened his weight, looking uncertain, and gave her an awkward pat on the back. So, how badly are you hurt? Fisk began quietly. Can you move?
It really doesn't hurt as bad as I thought it would,
Dinky admitted.
I guess I really got lucky. I could have been hurt pretty badly.
Biscuit looked relieved. Dinky glanced at the pendant around his neck, then at her own.
So, now we have more time, Pip. Tell me, what exactly happened with the pendant?
Biscuit lifted the accessory off of himself and stared at it, as if expecting to find more information. I still have no idea why it did what it did, really, she admitted. It started glowing, but it wasn't your magic coming from it. The light was purple, a warm, friendly sort of purple, not an evil one. As soon as I put on the pendant, it was like... He paused for several seconds, tapping a hand to his chin ponderously. It was almost like I tapped into your noses at that moment. I felt your fear, frustration, your desperation. It was impossible to tell if it was wrong or why, but I knew you were in grave danger. That sounds like some sort of enchantment, Clarity stated. A powerful, complicated enchantment. I don't know how to cast anything like that.
Neither do I,
Dinky admitted.
maybe Miss Twilight or Professor Lester can help us figure out what happened.
She paused as a thought occurred to her.
Speaking of ponies that are good for enchantments, is Sparkle okay?
The nurse says he's going to be all right, Scuffle assured her. It's going to take her a while to recover from her injuries. But you didn't do any kind of permanent damage with your dark magic, thankfully.
Once we got her back to the castle, we arrested her right here. She's in another ring of the infirmary now.
Honeydew explained.
The night only got more stressful from there, with the guards and the dean questioning us, and then the uproar when you were brought back.
Dinky added soberly.
But, Honeydew, you look pretty good considering all that happened.
She pointed out.
I've definitely seen you more rattled over smaller things than this.
Honeydew smiled shyly.
I suppose that's because Scuffle tried his best to keep me calm.
She admitted, glancing at the goat beside her.
I feel the worst when I'm allowed to stew in my own worries, and he helped to distract me while we waited for you to wake up.
Scuffle blushed. Well, what was I supposed to do? Let you sit yourself there and worry yourself to death? He huffed, looking away. Not that I like you or anything. Dinky giggled.
You're tough, but you're a good friend, Scuffle,
she said. Scuffle glared and opened his mouth to reply, but stopped short as Honeydew leaned over and gave her an appreciative nuzzle.
Dinky's right. Thanks, Scuffle,
she said sweetly, once again totally unaware of the blush rapidly crossing the colt's face, and she turned back to Dinky. It seems like things turned out okay, Clarity began, but there was one casualty. I'm afraid we lost Trouble. Dinky winced as she recalled Trouble's final moments. Oh, sure, remind me! I really liked that little fox Vic. I really did. Granted, not as much as some of the other ponies that I've watched die. Darn you, Armus Feggerlin, for taking away my Crescent Rose. I'm still mad. But still, I liked that little fox. It was cute. If there's ever a sequel, I better see Kits! Honeydew and Scuffle appeared just as distraught at the news.
What happened?
Honeydew whispered.
Did he suffer or did he just... He saved us,
Dinky declared.
I don't know how he knew what to do, but he got Scorpio off guard for just a second, and that was all we needed. We sealed her away again, but he fell into the portal with her. I don't think he escaped, but even if he did, I don't think he would have fared as well in the explosion as I did.
The atmosphere grew somber around the Gleaming Falls. Finally, Clarity piped up. We need to appreciate what he did for us. Maybe he was just paying us back for all the care and comfort we've given him this year. We shouldn't dwell on losing him. We should thank him for giving himself up for our sake. The others nodded. Everybody else think we made it through last night okay, right? Scuffle asked. Well, not quite, Clarity said, biting her lip. Dinky, I don't suppose you know why you still don't look like like you did in the cave.
I'm not sure,
Dinky admitted.
I think maybe we should wait until Princess Celestia gets here before we talk about anything regarding that.
Did I hear my name? Princess Celestia trotted into the room, with the nurse at her side. As Celestia's nod, the mare bowed and excused herself from the room. Good morning, Princess, said Twilight. cantering forward and bowing before the monarch. "Good morning, Twilight," Celestia replied, albeit less enthusiastically. "Pardon me for skipping the small talk, but from what I've gathered so far, something very substantial occurred last night. I'd like a full account now that the immediate danger has passed." She looked towards Dinky. The filly saw no anger in her eyes, so hesitantly she spoke.
"It's mostly my fault, Princess. The Wraith on Tyrese tricked me, and I almost put all of Equestria into danger."
Celestia walked slowly to Dinky's bedside. The four foals gathered around, looked at her, unsure what to do. "Good morning, students," the princess greeted, smiling at each of them in turn. "I know you all want to catch up with Dinky, but would you excuse us for a moment? Twilight Sparkle, Dinky Doo, and I will need to talk to her alone for a bit." Clarity nodded. "Sure, Princess. We'll wait outside." The group of visitors hurried out the room. Clarity sent Dinky a glance that tried to say, "Good luck," before pulling the door shut. Celestia nodded, satisfied, and then turned to the recovering filly. "Now, Dinky, please, begin at the beginning. What led you and your friends to sneak out last night?" Dinky cleared her throat and began to tell the story, making sure not to leave out anything.
"After all," she thought, "I'm already going to be in serious trouble. Trying to deceive a princess would only make things worse."
The princess listened silently until she reached the point where the explosion had closed the portal to the realm of stars. Before she could move on to the experience she had in her other realm during her unconsciousness, Celestia spoke up. "It's definitely unfortunate that Antares was clever enough to instigate this whole sequence," she began, "but what's done is done. Now is not the time or place to debate guilt or decide punishments. What we need to do is investigate immediately what had happened to you in that cave." Dinky flattened her ears against her head and looked away. "Your story matches Twilight's," Celestia continued. "Scorpio overloaded your body with dark magic and turned you into a wraith. Yet against all expectations, you stood your ground alongside your allies, instead of falling into the call of darkness." "I know it makes no sense," Twilight chimed in, sounding intrigued. "Dark magic can't be used for good, can it? I mean, it's a basic principle of the magical medium." Dinky frowned.
"Miss Twilight, you saw it happen. Maybe there's an exception to the rule?"
"Dinky makes a good point," Celestia said. "Technically, dark magic can occasionally be used neutrally, as you and I have used it in the Crystal Empire to unlock some of King Sabra's secrets. It's possible, since the spell in question had combat applications, that it's a loophole. What confuses me, however, is why a wraith would ever use a dark spell for a non-malicious purpose." She paused, and then turned, giving Twilight a serious stare that made the Book of Smears shift a bit. "Twilight, are you certain that what you witnessed was Dinky's transformation into a wraith, and not some other dark spell?" she asked. "Absolutely," Twilight affirmed. "It matched all the textbook descriptions. I'm not entirely sure how Dinky referred to her disguised form while unconscious, but there is a wraith underneath." Dinky had no idea how she returned to her original appearance, but suspected it had something to do with her state of mind while visiting the plane between realms.
"I'm pretty sure Miss Twilight's right," she admitted. "But I swear I'm not evil. If I show you, then you promise not to, attack me?"
"Unless you make an attempt to harm someone in this room, you will be safe, even if you are a wraith," Celestia assured her. "But please, show us if you can, so we can erase any doubt." Dinky groaned. "Does she have to? Memories of last night are still fresh in my mind." Celestia smiled gently. "Miss Doo, if what you told me earlier is true, and Dinky has retained her earlier personality, then her change will be a physical one only." Dinky pondered the princess's words before nodding. "You're right. She's still my daughter Dinky, whether she looks like a pony or not." The Pegasus stepped forward and gave Dinky a delicate hug. "So the princess what happened to you, all right?" she asked. Dinky nodded slowly.
"Okay."
Cautiously, Dinky lit her horn, and allowed dark magic to replace her usual glow. It almost felt no different than her usual magic did. She barely had the urge to energy forward before it spread through her whole body. Dinky's frame rippled like smoke. Dark color spread across a hazy image. She felt her features melt painlessly away, revealing the form beneath. Just a moment later, she returned to a stable form, fully transformed into a dark-coated wraith. She glanced at several apprehensive stares he received.
So, I guess it's me now.
Dinky replied, grinning at the sound of her own altered voice.
But I have a chance on the inside. Honest.
Princess Celestia seemed to be thinking hard about what to say or do next. She was thinking closely for a few moments, choosing her words.
Princess?
Dinky asked nervously. Can you stand? Celestia asked suddenly. You seem as though you are in much pain. Are you strong enough to get to your hooves? Carefully, Dinky slid out the side of the bed and managed to stand ready after a few moments of adjustment.
I can stand, but I'm not entirely sure why.
She admitted.
I should have broken every bone in my body last night, even if I did manage to survive. Why is it that I just feel sore, but otherwise I'm uninjured?
I bet being a wraith actually had something to do with that, Twilight gasped, a look of comprehension crossing her features. As we just saw, wraiths can change into an amorphous state. It's possible you can instinctively soften some of your features a moment before impact, leaving you a lot less wounded than you would have otherwise. Dinky blinked.
So, if I was still a pony, I'd be dead now?
She asked, shocked. I think that would be very likely, considering the circumstances, Twilight admitted, nodding. I never thought I'd say it, but maybe you were lucky this happened to you.
See? Everything has an upside,
Dizzy announced.
and this is the way thinking is now. I'm prepared to accept it and move forward. That's all you can do.
It may not be that simple, Twilight argued. I mean, we still have to figure out if Dinky has broken the laws of magic, or if there's some complicated ruse to try to... Dizzy swung herself around, eyes shifting to a moment of focus as she glared to the mayor.
Twilight, I know you're a modern authority on magic, and one of the few points I trust with my daughter's safety. But for once in your life, you need to take something at face value, even if it doesn't make sense,
she scolded.
But...
Calm down, please, Princess urged, stepping between the mayors. You both have a point. As Twilight said, there has never been a good wraith before. But that doesn't mean we can be sure of what's happening here. We need further information before we fully understand what Dinky has become. What we really need to find is the difference between Dinky and all other wraiths. Twilight deduced, tapping a hoof to her chin thoughtfully. If the law of magic has really been disproved here, there must be a reason why. Dinky began, flicking her smoky tail nervously, causing flecks of darkness to float off of it.
I know you might not believe me, since I'm the suspect here, but I think I've got an explanation.
We'd be happy to hear it, Celestia said. Anything that could set on light on this strange event would be appreciated, no matter who it comes from. Dinky nodded.
Well, while I was unconscious, I met this pony.
Princess Celestia, Twilight, and Dizzy listened silently as Dinky recounted her conversations with Starsworld or Bearded, and his theory that, since he had not given in to the temptations of dark magic during her corruption, her body had transformed while her mind remained her own. She made sure to relay every detail she could remember. After all, if Starsworld's logic couldn't convince the ponies in front of her she was telling the truth, it wasn't likely anything could. The trio of ponies stared wide-eyed as the little wraith finished her story. Celestia was the first to find her voice. There are a lot of sensible points there, she admitted. There haven't been a number of established wraiths in Equestria's history, and those that were went seeking dark powers as ponies before they transformed. You, Dinky, were served just yesterday as behaving like your normal self, save for your troubles with dark magic surges. But even then, you were trying to contain them, not increase them. Dizzy smirked.
There's a key difference, Twilight. Don't you think he wasn't really evil?
Now hold on, Twilight snorted. I don't want to antagonize Dinky any further than I'd have to. But how do we know Dinky didn't turn to darkness somewhere along the line and had the sense to keep up her usual behavior to avert suspicion? Dizzy bristled and prepared another outburst. But Dinky calmly interjected first.
Miss Twilight, Antari said that any wraith would gladly accept Scorpio's return, since she's their best bet for gaining the positions of power they want.
Well, yeah, but...
I seal Scorpio back in the realm of stars,
Dinky continued, ignoring the interruption.
Doesn't that speak for itself?
Twilight paused, considering Dinky's purpose. Well, yes, I suppose it does. It does indeed, Celestia confirmed. Given the information, we must make the assumption that Dinky is telling the truth. Twilight nodded, and opened her mouth to say something else, but stopped short. Gradually, her eyes widened, but not stopping until they had reached near ridiculous proportions. I just realized, she whispered. If the explanation was true, that means... Dinky really did meet Starswell the Bearded! Dinky grinned.
Yes, I did,
She said, nodding silently.
Actually, he gave me a message to deliver directly to you, Miss Twilight.
The news hit Twilight like a physical force. Shaking, she stepped closer to the tiny wraith, leaning down to not miss a single syllable of the clearly all-important message. Trying desperately to stifle a giggle, Dinky trod beside her tutor's ear.
Starswell the Bearded,
She began, just above a whisper,
one of the most famous and powerful unicorns in history, says, Hi.
Twilight stood stone still for a very long moment, her gaze locked on an unremarkable point in the distance. Her voice cracked as he repeated the message. Hi? Dinky giggled.
I'm pretty sure that was the reaction he was hoping for,
She admitted.
He's probably laughing his leg off right now.
Twilight only grew more frantic. But, if he sent me a message at all, then at least he means he knows he exists, which means he must think I'm some sort of noble unicorn, doesn't he? Twilight began pacing the room, mumbling to herself. It must be a secret code. Yes, that's it, she said under her breath. Obviously, there's a deeper meaning hidden in this castle greeting. A message that must be sent for me to decipher. But what could it be? Is this a test? Is he trying to determine if I'm worthy of even attempted to follow his glorious legacy? Celestia made her way over to Twilight and put a wing over her panicked student. Twilight, I think it's more likely that it was simply a prank. She laughed. Starswell did occasionally enjoy a laugh at other ponies' expense.
He just wanted to see how worked up you get. Now that he's had his fun, I'm allowed to give you the rest of his message.
Twilight darted down from Celestia's wing so quickly that the latter lost a few feathers. Is this a thing with magic users, Princess, that you girls love to troll? Yes. I fear for any students you may take in. Several years later. Okay, Starlight. Now what I want you to do is read this book very slowly. He doesn't really have to read that book, does he? No, I just want to see if he can do it. Being a teacher is fun. Within a second, she was a few inches from Dinky's face again, waiting in relevant silence.
Starswell's been keeping an eye on your studies,
Dinky told her.
She says that you shouldn't get discouraged, because you're on your way to making some magical breakthroughs. He's proud of what you accomplished, and what you will accomplish.
He what? Twilight swayed and threatened to topple over entirely, avoiding doing so only because Dinky leaned against her side, supporting her. After a few seconds, she regained her balance and looked at Dinky, eyes full of something else beside her auto sorcerer. I'm sorry, she said abruptly, hanging her head. My studies in friendship, like my studies in magic, are far from complete. I've been your tutor since you cast your very first spell. I should have been able to see that same eager student in you, despite what's happened. I'm sorry I was so suspicious. Dinky glanced at her own dark fur, and the smoke trailing faintly from her tail.
It's okay, Miss Twilight. If I encountered a pony, wraith like me, I'd be innocently suspicious too.
It's also worth knowing that, although Dinky is not evil, she's probably not entirely unchanged, Princess Celestia warned. During these past few months, Dinky, have you felt the influence of dark magic on your personality? Dinky nodded silently.
I admit I've been making some risky decisions, and my temper was shorter than I would have liked. The only opponent I ended up hurting was Sparkler, but trust me, I'll never let that happen again.
Celestia nodded. Although dark magic will not continue to conflict with your established personality, the damage done before you transform may have some lasting effects. Please, be wary of your temper and impulsiveness, as you may still find those qualities coming out now and then. If anyone can keep them under control, it's my Dinky, Dusty said, determined. The wraith in her may have won the body, but the pony's heart will always be stronger. Dinky lifted her weight shyly.
You're not upset?
She asked tentatively.
I'll try my best, but I might not always be your sweet little innocent muffin anymore.
Dizzy chuckled. If dark magic hadn't done that to you, growing up probably would have. And you would have been a lot less apologetic about it. Samara laughed, winking at her daughter. Trust me, I'm just relieved that a little extra rebelliousness is all that's going to be different about you. Dinky grinned, feeling her new fangs touch her lips as he did so.
On that note, can I put my pony appearance back on now?
She asked uncomfortably.
Even if this is what's underneath, I'd rather not go like this if I don't have to.
Of course, Princess Celestia agreed. You've already shown us all you needed to know. Relieved, Dinky lit her horn and gave in to the strange sensation melting away into smoke. By simply willing it, she felt her more familiar feeling frame reform. As soon as it did, though, Dizzy let out a gasp. Dinky! You kitty mark! Shot. Shring! Dinky craned her neck to peer on her flank. Upon it was a ring of tiny black and purple stars, surrounding a much brighter yellow star in the center. A pony fit to wield both types of magic, Princess Celestia said, examining the mark with wonder, wielding darkness as a tool, while light remains in your heart. Truly, Equestria has never seen a pony like you, Dinky Doo.
And that means I probably haven't faced the last of any challenges coming my way, huh?
Dinky asked. Celestia nodded. I'm afraid they're only the beginning, but after what has happened here, I think you'll be able to overcome them.
Thanks,
Dinky replied, humbled by the princess's confidence.
I'll do my best.
The filly wobbled in place, sipping slightly to maintain her balance.
But can I start facing those challenges later? I'm so really tired.
Of course, Celestia responded. We have much more to discuss, but it will wait. We'll leave you to rest, Dizzy said, as he helped Dinky back into bed. The nurse will be here if you need anything, okay? Dinky nodded. As Twilight and Celestia made their way out of the room, Dizzy stayed behind. Once Dinky was tucked away snugly back into the covers, the mare leaned forward and kissed her on the forehead. You're still my little muffin, she whispered. Smart, brave, and with a heart of gold. And even the most evil being in equestrian history couldn't change that. Dinky smiled, then closed her eyes as her mother trotted from the room. Today was the last day of the term. Most ponies, finished with their exams, prepared for the year's closing ceremonies, completely unaware of the near catastrophe that occurred the night before. It was mid-afternoon. After a long nap, Dinky felt well enough to get up and wander around. After an extensive discussion on her condition with Celestia, the nurse gave her permission to return to her dormitory. The halls of the castle were nearly deserted. It was to be expected, Dinky supposed, as most of the students were probably packing their bags, and the professors were preparing for the closing ceremony. Dinky paused in the second-floor hallway, overlooking the castle's entrance, where one whole wall was a wide window, gazing out over the grounds, observing the ponies going about their day as if nothing significant had happened. Late afternoon sun bathed the campus and painted the surrounding mountains with wondrous colors. With the weight of the previous day still hanging over her, Dinky found herself much more able to appreciate the sight than she had in the past. Lost in thought, she hardly noticed the sound of hoofsteps approaching. She did snap right to attention, however, when the approaching pony spoke. Well, well, well. If it isn't the Academy's own dark mage. It was Sparkle's voice. Dinky spun to face the approaching overseer. Sparkle walked with a mild limp. A few small bandages decorated her coat, likely covering the more severe cuts. Despite her battered appearance, her eyes were bright. She studied Dinky as he approached.
Sparkler!
Dinky said nervously.
I...
You disobeyed my commands and assaulted me with dark magic, Sparkler said flatly. If you're going to try to explain it away as something else, good luck. Dinky shook her head.
No, I'm just very relieved that you're okay, she admitted. Also, I'm sorry. You were right all along. What we had the right motivations, what we tried to do was outrageous, and almost put all of Equestria in danger. Worse still, I managed to hurt the ponies I care about, or put them in peril.
The filly hung her head.
Last night, Daisy was the dark magic. I really was the troublemaker you kept making me out to be all year. I'm sorry.
Sparkler said nothing. Dinky could feel the young mare's aze burning into her. But then, she felt nothing for a few seconds. Sparkler lit her horn. For a moment, Dinky feared the overseer was going to attack her. Instead, there was feeling moving against her chest. She realized her pendant was being lifted from her neck. Confused, she allowed it to be untaken off. Sparkler held the pendant in front of her face, staring at its dangling aura. I've seen a few unfamiliar ponies around today, she said, still examining the jewelry. Some of them are even unicorns. Did they come here last night to help you? Dinky nodded.
Yes? How did you know?
I've been filled in on last night's events, Sparkler said simply. Her gaze never left the pendant. After a few seconds, when Dinky offered no further comment, she conceded. In a pony's darkest hour, the one bound to them by the spell will be altered, she said finally. It's a difficult enchantment to cast, that's for sure, but looks like you ended up needing it after all. So, I suppose it was worth the effort. Dinky's jaw dropped when she realized what Sparkler meant.
You added the enchantment to my pendant that let Pipsqueak know I needed help?
The overseer replied, but then again, she didn't really need to. She lowered the pendant back into Dinky's height. The filly quickly slipped it around her neck. The two ponies' gazes finally met.
Sparkler, what made you think?
Regardless of what all may have transpired this year between us, I am still your overseer, and I am responsible for your safety, said Sparkler levelly. I thought, considering your circumstances in the last few months, that an emergency backup plan might come up in handy in case things turned very sour.
You saved my life,
Dinky breathed.
Actually, you probably saved all of Equestria. If Pip had brought the others along when he did.
Your friend would have needed to do that if you just returned to the castle when I commanded you, instead of trying to kill me with dark magic, Sparkler grumbled. Dinky winced.
I know. I insulted you. I hurt you. I thought I might have killed you. You can't even imagine how much the guilt's weighing on me. I'm so sorry.
The filly lowered her head, expecting Sparkler to berate her further. Her best simply walk away. Instead, she felt the mare's hoof come to resting gently on the back of her head. I know you're sorry, and I forgive you. That was the very last thing Dinky expected to hear. She froze, certain she misheard.
Pardon me?
I forgive you, Sparkler sighed, because I need to. Because it would be unfair of me not to. Because it's time for a change. Dinky raised an eyebrow. Do you remember that night, when we had that little talk in my bedroom? Sparkler asked. Dinky nodded, although it felt like months longer. Only a few weeks had passed since then. For me, it had only been a few days. That was when I enchanted your pendant, Sparkler admitted. Part of the reason was for your protection, yes, but it was also an experiment.
I'm still not sure what that has to do with you forgiving me,
Dinky said hesitantly, cocking her head. I've been thinking about what you said, about allowing other ponies in your life. Sparkler began, choosing between her phrasing carefully. I thought if I used that enchantment and you wound up in danger, I might get to learn the extent of your loved ones would go through you. Decide it was worth it.
And what conclusion did you come to?
Dinky asked, wondering how a mind as analytical as Sparkler's would interpret the events. Sparkler seemed to be thinking hard as she spoke. Not only did your friend come to your aid, he brought together an entire band of ponies close to you to attempt a rescue. Every one of them risked their lives, so I've been told, in order to bring you back here in one piece. Dinky nodded.
That's right. Does he think letting ponies like that in your life is worth the perceived risk?
Sparkler chewed her lip. As I said, my father wasn't there for me like your family was. She sighed. I never even met him. And my mother? She's not the type who would stick her neck out for me if I found myself in the situation you were in.
Not all families are close-knit as others, I guess.
Dinky admitted.
But I never said you would definitely be born into an ideal family, Sparker. When you surround yourself with ponies, you really care deeply about you. Even if you can't start with your own parents.
Sparkle cringed. Where can I find ponies like that? She asked hesitantly. Dinky rolled her eyes.
One young stallion's been trying to get your attention all year, and you know it, Sparkler.
There were a few long seconds of silence. I think I need some time to think. Sparkle admitted, shuffling a hoof on the carpet. Maybe I could talk to Prestoland. She trailed off, bowed further as she stood lost in thought. Eventually, she looked back to Dinky and managed a weak smile. Anyway, like I said, you're forgiven. I haven't been fair, and I'm sorry. Maybe we can forgive each other? Dinky returned Sparkle's hesitant smile, with a much brighter one of her own.
You sound like a good idea to me.
Unfortunately, Dinky's tearfulness didn't seem to lift Sparkle's mood much. Something in the young mare's eyes looked uneasy. Dinky, she muttered, you know that, as much as we both like to put everything that happened behind us, it can't happen like that. I may not know the whole story, but I've at least heard the basics of what happened last night. I'm sure you can put two and two together well enough to know what happened. So does the Dean. Dinky winced. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she knew the Dean would come up eventually, but she managed to not think about it. Dinky, I wasn't trying to trick you last night in the courtyard. Sparkle said, tossing her mane nervously. What I said about the Dean is true. She's going to...
I'm going to what, Sparkler?
With her head high and a haughty, victorious smile on her face, Dean Brightspark marched around the corner from a nearby corridor and trotted up to the pair of students. Sparkler shrank back like a mouse, cornered by a cat. I was just saying you were going to punish Dinky appropriately for the trouble she caused last night, the overseer mewed.
Right.
Brightspark laughed, clearly delighted at the thought.
I hope you weren't planning on getting out of an expulsion this time, Dinky. Leaving after the school after dark is a punishable offense. Deliberate use of dark magic, despite prior warnings, warrants expulsion in itself. And we won't even go into the fact you nearly doomed Equestria in the process. I go as far as to say you are the most delinquent student in the history of this academy!
Dinky hunkered down so low, she nearly touched the floor and said nothing.
You don't even try to argue.
Brightspark chuckled, adjusting her glasses, as her cackling threatening to toss them from her muzzle.
It's time for the best, trust me. Now come, we're going directly to my office to fill out your expulsion papers again, and this time, my little pony, they aren't going to be overruled.
Brightspark turned and trotted merrily toward her office. Sparkler silently urged Dinky to follow, but the filly stood her ground. After a few moments, Brightspark came to a halt and turned slowly around.
Perhaps you didn't hear me,
she cooed, voice dripping with fake politeness.
We're going to my office. Please, come along.
I got a question.
Dinky said calmly, ignoring the Dean's order completely.
Did you really sing so well that you tried to blackmail Sparkler into helping me get expelled?
The Dean released a peal of laughter that echoed through the empty halls.
Now, Dinky, whatever gave you such a ridiculous idea?
She asked.
Sparkler's merely been keeping an eye on your exploits, we call them. Any accusations of conspiracy or blackmail are utterly unfounded.
To Dinky's surprise, Sparkler, who had been silent since the Dean initially addressed her, opened her mouth to reply, but Brightspark cut her off before she could begin.
Sparkler,
she golden, waving a forehoof.
Every pony's very tense lately, what with that incident last night. The last thing you want to say is something that might be taken the wrong way now that the crisis has already passed. After all, you're getting out of this scot-free. Dinky is the one who will be punished. There's no need for you to say anything. Trust me.
Sparkler blinked. Suddenly anger flashed across her face. You still think I'm in on this awful scheme? She snapped, horn flaring angrily. Dinky and I have fought some major differences all term, but despite that, I couldn't bring myself to do your dirty work for you, despite all your threats. If you're going to expel Dinky for what she did, that's understandable. But don't you dare insinuate that I actually participated in your scheme to threaten her! Bright Spark crinkled her nose. Finally got on a backbone, have you? She grumbled. Although, I suppose it's not really dangerous for you to speak out of line at this point. Sparkle raised an eyebrow. How so? Well, you're right. You've done nothing wrong. You've been doing your overseer job perfectly. Your contributions to trying to avert last night's crisis has been noted by Princess Celestia. If I were to strip you of your overseer title on vague means now, it would arouse too much suspicion. She smirked at Sparkler and Dinky's outraged expressions. Besides, she continued, doesn't matter anyway. Dinky turned out to be fully capable of getting into trouble without your help. Soon be expelled, and you'll graduate with your highly reputable title intact. I say you were very lucky, Sparkler.
So you really were blackmailing her!
Dinky snarled. Of course I was, Sparkler hissed. But so what? The only pony who would be able to do anything about it is Princess Celestia, and without any solid evidence, she has no reason to believe the testimony of two viddies, especially when one of them is a delinquent about to be kicked out of this fine school. Of course, admitting your crimes aloud is more than enough solid evidence, came a disembodied voice. Bright Spark nodded. Well, of course, but Princess Celestia isn't here. She trailed off, as it occurred to her that the voice of a pony not present had spoken, and her confusion turned to horror as she realized whose voice it was. Panicking, she backed against the wall as a rather large invisibility spell rippled through the air, dropping away to reveal a perfectly concealed Princess Celestia. Yes! You're going down, witch! There, have it, Princess!
Princess!
Dinky gasped, staring up at the monarch.
Were you following me?
Actually, I was following Professor Spark, Celestia admitted. I just wanted to reassure myself that she was behaving as the dean should at the end of the term. I seem to have discovered otherwise. But Princess Celestia, I'm certain this is all a huge misunderstanding, Bright Spark stuttered. Anything you may have overheard was lightly taken out of context. Perhaps you and I should adjourn so I may properly explain. No explanations are necessary, Bright Spark, Celestia said, shaking her head sadly. Throughout this term, your actions have begun to worry me, particularly when they included Dinky Doo. I tried to convince myself that everything was fine, considering you've given 4 decades of your life to the school. But now I can see I was in error. I shudder to think how many students over these many years you've gotten away with mistreating the way you have Dinky. Well, there was Sunburst, Trixie, and I think I may have convinced Twilight Sparkle that friends are useless. But, Princess, you must understand, Bright Spark parried desperately. Well, perhaps my methods were questionable, even outright unwholesome. I still only acted in the best interests of the school, and every pony in it. I know Dinky's still been using dark magic, and doing as well as she was physically able to keep it under control, Princess Celestia finished. After the incident in the residence tower earlier this year, there have been no further situations in which other students were put into danger by her. Yes, and we were very lucky, Bright Spark insisted. A pony continuing to wield dark magic here is unacceptable. I had to do something. Then I would have appreciated you contacting me for a civil discussion of your opinions on the matter, rather than taking matters into your own hands in such a way, Celestia retorted. Bright Spark's lips curled angrily. Pah! Like you would have listened, she growled. I know it's customary to trust the princess's decisions, but not when they needlessly overlook the fundamental rules of my school! Levy, clip. You are an idiot! This is not your school, Princess Celestia answered loudly. You have been given the privilege of leading my students in my absence, as had been the case with every dean for hundreds of years. Well, but... And I can see it's time for that privilege to be taken away, Celestia continued, cutting the dean off. Bright Spark, I am stripping you of your position as acting dean of Celestia's Academy for Gifted Unicorns. Bright Spark scowled, tossing her silvery mane with an air of self-importance. Fine, boot me out for cracking down on troublesome students. When the Academy goes to seed, don't come crying to me. I think we'll manage, Celestia said crossly. Now collect your things from your office. I don't intend to allow you to host tonight's closing ceremony. Muttering under her breath, the old mare began to trot away. At least there's one silver lining, she said as he receded down the hall. I may be going down, but Dinky's going with me, regardless of what I did. Her actions last night were definitely expulsion-worthy. Ma'am, I'm going to warn you. Maybe, Princess Celestia said thoughtfully, that maybe not. Bright Spark stopped in her tracks. Bright Spark, I beg you, if you have a single intelligent neuron in that little brain of yours, you will stop while you're ahead, and who knows, maybe Celestia won't put you on the blacklist from every single teaching position in school from the Crystal Empire down to the Badlands, and maybe you might still get a job teaching dragons in Philadelphia. Slowly, she turned her head, looking over her shoulder at the princess and the two fillies who had been silent for some time. Excuse me? Since Dinky's original dark magic incident, she has been doing everything possible to keep it under control, including reaching out to her friends and receiving help from Princess Luna, Celestia said as the dean returned to the group of conversing ponies. To the best of her ability, she has acted exactly as I would have recommended. Unfortunately, her recent decisions were skewed by the strong presence of dark magic in her. I can't really consider them entirely her fault. Just because the crisis has passed doesn't mean her future decisions will be better! Bright Spark exclaimed. You're acting as if the dark magic has simply left her system or something!
No, dark magic's here to stay, Dinky admitted. But I've learned to control it now. I won't be putting any more ponies in danger.
I sincerely doubt that, Bright Spark snapped, before turning to Celestia. Princess, even if you believe that blatant lie, what if you're wrong? What if Dinky continues to be a threat to every pony around her? Then perhaps it is better to have her here for much of the year, surrounded by unicorns who can help her until she can finally control it, than to turn her loose into Equestria, where she posed a greater threat to the innocent, unsuspecting ponies. You're really not going to expel her? Dean roared, slamming her forehead against the floor. You're allowing a criminal to inhabit our hollow halls of magical education? Are you completely out of your mind? Wow. Bright Spark, I knew you were evil and cruel, but I had no idea you were so stupid. Look, honey, it's not worth it. Suicide's the coward's laid out. I mean, if you were suicidal, take a few pills. Be a lot less painful. Dinky immediately flattened her ears against her head, managing to do so just before Celestia broke into the royal, canterlot voice. You have already been in a lot of trouble today, and now you have the gall to insult your princess! I will not tolerate this lack of respect! Celestia's voice raised such a volume at the end of her sentence that the huge window overlooking the courtyard shattered, raining glass onto the formerly empty grounds below. Bright Spark, who seemed to have shrunken considerably in the last few seconds, opened her mouth to reply, but it was cut short. It's been years since I have encountered a pony with such a self-important, ill-mannered attitude as yours. Leave this campus immediately! I will not have a pony like you around my students for 1 second longer! Celestia continued, her thunderous voice causing Bright Spark to step back defensively. Celestia, I do love it when writers decide to use you sparingly and decide to show off how badass you can be. It, it fills my heart with joy. It really does. Assaulted by the force of Celestia's voice, the former Dean backpedaled further. Too far, every pony realized, where a hind hoof, without the window barrier to stop it, slipped off the edge of the stone floor and into midair. For 1 second, a look of terror crossed the old unicorn's face as he attempted to maintain her balance. An instant later, she cried out, and she toppled backwards, pummeling towards the courtyard below. Dinky and Sparkle were too stunned to react, but Celestia moved immediately, crossing out into the air and gliding her horn. Bright spark was clear in the princess's golden aura several pony lengths before she hit the ground, and was gently lowered to the courtyard below. As soon as she regained her footing, she threw herself on the ground before Celestia. Even a pony like you doesn't deserve a fate like that, Celestia said. Now get up and get out of here. Nodding shakily, Bright Spark got to her hose and bolted down the path toward the train station, her tail rippling behind her as she disappeared as fast as her old hose could carry her. Toodles! Bye! Don't let the train yard hit you on the way out! So, you're not getting expelled? Clarity gasped.
None of us are,
Dinky announced, grinning at her friends' relieved faces.
After the Dean fled, Celestia told me I should go get ready for tonight's closing ceremonies, and I should let you two know you're all very good friends for trying to keep me safe when I most need some pony to guide me.
That's a relief, Scuffle sighed, wiping his brow. Even my brothers didn't screw up bad enough to get kicked out of this place. But I really thought we had. Dinky, Clarity, Honeydew, and Scuffle were standing outside the residence towers, having their first real chance to catch up since the events the night before. Their belongings already packed, the train would be arriving to take every pony home in about an hour after the closing ceremonies concluded. Ditzy, Pipsqueak, and the others had come by a short time earlier to ensure one final time Dinky was no longer in any physical distress before heading home on an earlier train.
You're so strange being back here,
Dinky thought to herself, taking a deep breath of autumn air as she trotted alongside her friends.
It feels like years ago I was able to take a normal stroll through campus like this. But really, it was just yesterday. Oh, Dinky, Clarity,
Honeydew chirped, snapping Dinky out of her thoughts.
Congratulations on getting your cutie marks, by the way. Who would have thought you'd get them less than a day apart?
Dinky grinned and stared at the ring of colored stars on her flank.
Thanks!
She giggled.
I don't think either of us have had time to really think about them yet, now that you mention it. Things have been kind of hectic.
Clarity nodded in agreement, showing out the design of her own flank. I can't wait to go home and show Lucid she's gonna flip!
I'm just excited not being called a blank flank anymore.
Dinky added.
All the feelings and cults back home are going to see us in a different light now.
Only the boys will, really, Scuffle chimed in. I've had my cutie mark for a while, and trust me, only the ponies who know your flank better than they know you are really going to change. Your friends, and enemies for that matter, will treat you pretty much the same. That's really insightful, Scuffle, Clarity admitted. Scuffle shrugged. Police at home know me as Scores of Frosty's little brother. Thanks to you guys. I managed to stake out that rep here before it stuck. Now I just have to figure out how to do the same back in Philly.
You're a better pony now than you were back when the term started,
Dinky reminded him.
I'm sure everybody will be able to see that. Just make an effort to stay out of your brother's hooves and saddles, and I'm sure our ponies will reach out to you.
Scuffle smiled. Yeah, thanks, Dink. Speaking of ponies changing for the better, Clarity began, what about Sparkler? You said before you talked to her earlier. Did you finally get through to her?
I hope so,
Dinky admitted.
She needs somebody in her peer group to reach out. She wants to get back on track. I hope she talks to Presto before they go their separate ways.
Honeydew confided.
He seems to be the only pony around here who wants to do that for her.
A thought occurred to Dinky as he stopped walking.
Clarity, Honeydew, how about you two head to the castle? I want to talk to Scuffle a second before the ceremony, so we'll catch up.
No problem, Clarity said, nodding. Later, Dinky.
See you soon,
Honeydew said as the two fillies trotted away. Scuffle. Dinky turned to face Scuffle, who raised a curious eyebrow. Something up?
Sparkler has some unconfessed feelings, Dinky began. Kind of like another pony I know. There's only a few hours left in the term. Are you going to, talk to Honeydew about anything?
Scuffle blushed and fixed his gaze firmly on the ground. I can't even try to pretend nothing's going on anymore, he admitted. You and Clarity figured it out pretty quick. I do kinda, sorta, maybe have a crush on Honeydew. But if she knew that, she might not react, how I might hope she would. Dinky prepared a response, but Scuffle suddenly went back up, meeting her gaze with a direct, sure-looking one of his own. Here's the thing, Dinks. Honeydew is shy and timid. You know that as well as I do. It takes a long time to earn her trust, and even longer to gain her affection. He paused to turn to look towards the castle. Now that distant specks that were Clarity and Honeydew were continuing. Look, Honeydew is still learning how to reach out to ponies around her, and I'm still learning about how to treat friends myself. We're both improving, but half a term isn't enough for us to fully develop those skills. We still have 4 more years that we're going to be together at this academy. So I just thought maybe I should focus on developing strong friendships instead of rushing into something more than that. Dinky broke into a huge smile.
You're absolutely right,
she affirmed, giving Scuffle an attaboy pat on the back.
It's just next term starts, you'll be seeing all of us, including Honeydew, every day again anyway. Move at the pace you're comfortable with. You got loads of time.
Scuffle smiled and smirked. Well, I suppose there's always a chance Honeydew might figure it out herself after a while.
I wouldn't count on that.
Dinky laughed.
Yeah, come on, it's almost sunset. Let's get down there before the ceremony starts.
Full admiration for Scuffle's surprising maturity, Dinky broke into a brisk trot as she and her friend made their way into the castle. The main hall was packed. Nearly every one of the academy students was in attendance, as well as every member of the staff. Dinky, several of our professors, as well as Nestor, talking quietly in the seats in front row, with the rest of the academy's professors just close by. Clarity had saved 2 open seats, allowing Dinky and Scuffle to settle in next to their friends. Just in time, Clarity said as they arrived. The ceremony will be starting any minute. Dinky took her seat, pausing to gaze around the huge room. After just a year's study, the important magical figures depicted in the stained glass windows, formerly strangers to hers, had almost become household names. She paused once again, gazing at the glossy image of star-shielded beard. When she had first visited this place, it couldn't help but smile. The goddess winked back at her. The illumination orbs on the pedestals began to glow more brightly as the last rays of sunlight disappeared. Sensing something was happening, the murmuring crowd of students quieted. 2 twinkling bodies of light, one yellow and one blue, suddenly flickered to life among the main stage. They grew larger and brighter, growing to several times the typical pony size before fading away, leaving Princess Celestia and Princess Luna standing in their place. Good evening, fillies and gentlecoats, Celestia welcomed. It's been an exciting and eventful term, but once again we find ourselves just a few hours from its end. So as always, it's time for a ceremony to look back on another wonderful year. We have speeches prepared by a few select students, and professors we feel will best put this term into perspective, Luna added. Please listen and reminisce as your class year reflects on a year gone by. One by one, various unicorns from different levels in their education and with different specialties took the stage, each one pausing to give a short talk about what they had learned about magic, about themselves, and about ponies around them during that year at the academy. It was all so normal. Dinky found herself really appreciating the break from thinking about dark magic, raves, the fate of Equestria, and other serious topics. For a few hours the speeches continued. After 9 or 10 ponies had spoken, Celestia returned to enter the stage. Before we conclude our ceremony for the evening, she began, we traditionally hear one final speech from the valedictorian of the graduating class. This year, interestingly, our valedictorian may have some additional insights to offer us, as she is also one of our overseers. We'd like to invite Miss Sparkler up to say a few words. There was a small wave of applause as Sparkler rose from the seat and made her way to the stage. Sparkler has the highest marks in her class, Cardi asked aloud as the stomping began to slow down. I knew she was smart, but valedictorian.
Sparkler is really focused on her responsibilities as overseer,
Dinky pointed out.
It makes sense she might be equally concerned about her grades. She's one of the most dedicated ponies I've ever met when it comes to things she considers important.
Cardi nodded. Which, up until now, has included everything except
Making friends.
Dinky finished.
Maybe she's ready to change that. We'll find out in a moment,
Honeydew whispered.
She's about to speak.
Sparkler arrived at the podium, ignoring the whispers that spread through the room about her physically battered appearance. She stared out over the assembled ponies with her usual serious demeanor. Then she began to speak. You're probably expecting the usual valedictorian monologue. She began, voice level. You're bracing yourselves now for a lecture on the importance of applying yourselves, the impact of your school years on your future, and how careful study is time well spent. So here's that bit. All those things are true. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about something else. Dinky exchanged a surprised glance with her friends. Those topics were, in fact, exactly what she expected Sparkler's speech to be about. Curiously, she listened to what the young mayor had to say. This term has been an interesting one. I can't deny that, she continued. For some ponies, it was probably much like any other. But for a year, few, it was a year that will have a profound impact on the rest of their lives. I am one of those ponies. Sparkler paused, evidently collecting her thoughts. You've all noticed I've kept a no-nonsense attitude while performing my duties as overseer. When not focusing on my studies, I've been offering help and providing discipline, as were my primary duties. I've held all the rules to be absolute. I did everything by the book, and didn't inject any of my personal opinions to any of my work. As a result, I was viewed by the student body as exactly that which I presented myself as an overseer, not an individual. I won't pretend that wasn't completely my fault. Several ponies in the audience noted subtly as the overseer began to speak. But you know what? She asked rhetorically. I am an individual, not just a title. I am a pony like every one of you. I have spent 5 years at this academy, refusing to let any pony get to know the individual. And only very recently did one little filly break through that layer of indifference I've surrounded myself in and find that pony underneath. Now as Dinky's friends would glance at her, she hardly noticed, looking instead on hearing about that impact her eyes had on Sparkler. After that, the defenses I built up around myself and made so long were lowered. I was left to figure out if I could, or even wanted to, put them back up. Sparkler admitted, her usual stern voice beginning to melt away, and replaced by a more thoughtful one. For a little while, I was able to see the world the way the filly saw it, the way I'm sure many of you see it. A world where the actions of ponies around you can directly influence your own life, no matter how hard you may work to prevent it. And I started to realize that maybe rejecting other ponies as kindness to protect myself wasn't protecting me from misery at all. I had just sunk too deeply in denial to recognize that. By pushing other ponies away, I was making myself more miserable than being hurt by another pony could have made me. More than a few ponies in the audience were wearing confused looks, tilting their heads curiously.
Get the roll,
Dinky thought to herself.
You didn't know anything about this star and Sparkler until just now.
Sparkler seemed to be picking up on her listener's bewilderment as well. What I want you to take away from this, though, isn't anything about me, she continued. Rather, I'd like you to take to heart a lesson I just learned. One that I should have learned within days of arriving the academy years ago. Instead, it became one I didn't learn until my final weeks before graduation, and I pity anyone who has to wait that long to learn it as I did. The overseer took a deep, long breath, steeling herself and speaking in a confident tone. Here at Celestia's Academy for Gifted Unicorns, my primary goal is to study magic of all kinds, and study and practice can only teach us so much about it. Please do not forget, as I did, that the magic of friendship and family is a force that's just as significant. Without it, one cannot utilize magic to its true potential. I may be graduating with true top marks, but I have so much more to learn than any of you. Give yourselves that head start, and I'm very confident every one of you will reach new heights by the time you're graduating.
Magic is limited only by the strength of the mind and magic of the heart.
Dinky whispered, smiling at her friends.
Looks like Sparkler is finally learning that lesson for herself.
Before I step down and let the ceremony conclude, Sparkler said, I'd like to thank 2 ponies who helped me far more than I deserve. The first is the pony who put up with my unfair attitude to her all year. She persisted and managed to unearth a part of me I had long forgotten. But she's not a 5th-term student, and I don't want to have an effect on her reputation in the future here. I won't mention her name. She knows who she is, though, and I want her to know how much I appreciate what she did, even if I seemed to hate her until very recently. Thank you. Dinky blushed. The other pony is perhaps even more important, for not giving up on me when everyone else long since had, for putting up with my cold attitude every day since we arrived at this place as foals. He deserves to be recognized for not giving up on friendship with ponies he could really tell needed it, even if those ponies refused to accept it like I did. So Presto, thank you for being a dedicated fellow overseer, and dedicated even more to helping ponies who needed you. There were a few moments of silence. Sparkle awkwardly looked around, scanning the crowd. Presto? I'm sorry, Sparkler, said Celestia from the side of the room. Presto was called a few hours ago for a family emergency. I'm afraid he won't be able to attend the ceremony tonight. Sparkler blinked, ears dripping slowly. I see, she said, surprisingly calmly. My speech is concluded, then. Have a wonderful break and bright future, every pony. Looking a little shaken, Sparkler stepped off the stage and returned to her seat. Thank you for your closing speech, Sparkler, Celestia said, returning to center stage. I believe with that we consider this ceremony, in this term, over. To all our returning students, I look forward eagerly to seeing you next term for another year of magical study. Dean Brightspark has, respectfully accepted my suggestion that she retire, but I promise we'll have a new dean by the start of next term, while I hope we'll only have the best interests of each and every student of magic in mind. With that, good night, and safe travels to you all. Hundreds of hosts stand to the floor in a pause. Princess Celestia and Luna bowed and tried from the stage. Dinky and her friends rose from their seats.
Poor Sparkler,
Honeydew mumbled.
I hope she gets a chance to give Presto her message.
Dinky was considered trying to raise Sparkler to talk, but hundreds of assembled ponies who stood between her and the overseer, and the latter was already quickly making her way from the room. Come on, let's go outside, cried the assassin. It's a beautiful night for this late season. Might well enjoy it for a few more minutes before we head to the train. Dinky glanced over her shoulder once more, and watched Sparkler disappear from the room, before nodding and following her friends. A leaf twirled through the night air, coming to rest on Dinky's nose. She brushed it aside, staring at the forest it came from, the bright yellow-red leaves visible even in the late evening dark.
Ain't we still using the hideout next year?
She asked, staring into the trees. I don't see why not, Scuffle answered, twisting his tail thoughtfully. The only other pony who had any reason to believe it was there was Sparkler, and she won't be around next year.
We'll be the same trouble, though,
Honeydew mumbled, turning away from the forest and frowning at the memory.
Having him around always made it feel so homey. He was like our mascot.
Dinky stared up at the stars, staring at the outline of Scorpio, looking back down at her, and said nothing. After a few moments, she heard the sound of footsteps approaching behind her and her friends. She didn't immediately turn to greet the guests, but jumped upon hearing the calm female voice. Thinking of the stars, all the young ones. The four falls quickly turned to greet Princess Luna as the alicorn made her way into the mist. She acknowledged their brief bows with a nod. Did she too stare at the stars? I admit I overheard your lamentations about your lost friend a few moments ago, she said after a short silence. Losing one who was close to you is difficult, be it a pony or another of Equestria's creatures. Still, I urge you to remember that Fox's sacrifice was not in vain.
I know that,
Dinky replied, nodding slowly.
I just wish I knew what happened to him. I hope he didn't suffer. I'm not sure what side of the barrier he ended up on when the portal closed.
To the false surprise, Glinda smiled. Children, have you looked closely at the stars this night? She asked. Dinky, Scuffle, you should remember from astronomy which constellations to let the overhead.
I don't think any of us need to be reminded, Scorpio.
Dinky mumbled. Glinda nodded. You would not have had any way of knowing. But when Scorpio was briefly released from her extra-dimensional prison, her constellation disappeared from the sky. Those stars have now returned, but, as any pony intimately familiar with the night sky, as I would immediately notice, the features of the heavens are not quite the same. Dinky blinked. She and her friends took a look at the sky. So they did look different, but the filly couldn't determine what. Princess? Scuffle asked hesitantly. Our first term astronomy class didn't require we learn about every single star, or anything like that, so mind pointing out the difference to us? Of course, the princess answered. It was immediately apparent to me that, when the constellation returned, there were more stars there than when it had vanished. All Scorpio stars have returned, but now there are some extras. Why is that? Clarity asked. A small cluster of additional stars have appeared between Scorpio and Sagittarius. Luna explained, pointing to a group of stars slightly to the east. Can you see what shape they form? Dinky stared at the stars uncomprehendingly.
No.
Allow me to help, Luna said with a small chuckle. Observe. Luna's horn glowed, and a series of glowing lines began to appear a few pointing lengths overhead, illustrating a pattern created by the new stars. The glowing blue lines created an outline of a four-legged creature with pointed ears and a bushy tail. The design hadn't even formed fully yet when Dinky realized it was being drawn. Judging by the gasp behind her, her friends were coming to a sudden realization.
Princess Luna, it's dead!
It appears to be a fox, Luna said with a gleam in her eye. A determined fox, pursuing Scorpio relentlessly through the night heavens. Now, if you recall your lessons, anything that exists in the realm of stars appears as a constellation here. So, if we're seeing a fox chasing Scorpio in the night sky...
It means trouble is still out there!
Dinky finished, eyes filling with tears.
He's still alive in the realm of stars!
Luna nodded. You may never see trouble in person again. But at least you have knowledge that he exists beyond our realm. And every autumn, he can simply look up at the stars, watching your friend shimmer over equestrian nights as he pursues the evil pony that tried to hurt those who cared for him. Oh, that's just so sweet. Not gonna cry, not gonna cry, not gonna cry.
Is he safe there?
Honeydew asked.
Scorpio sounds really dangerous. Suppose he hurt him?
Beings in the realm of stars do not have a corporeal form, Luna explained. If you recall, Scorpio needed to consume the body of a wraith to return to this world. Under the form that trouble now exists, he should be invulnerable to any sort of attack. Clarity giggled. I bet he can still annoy Scorpio, though. If I know him, I'm sure he will. Yes, I suppose Scorpio is less than pleased. Ha 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 ha! Not only was her plan that spawned several millennia foiled in the night, but now she has to gather through the skies with trouble close behind. Dinky felt a warm feeling as she stared at the stars, hoping that trouble was looking right back at her, and her friends were beyond space and time. Dinky Doo, Luna said after a pause, if you find yourself in need of advice about your new dark powers, I'd like you to contact me. I don't know much, but I may be able to help.
You would? Dinky asked. Was dark magic connected with your transformation into Nightmare Moon?
It was not, Lizette answered, but perhaps some of its mortal ideas were part. Princess hung her head. I do not like to admit this, young ones, but Scorpio and I were colleagues, nay, perhaps even something like friends, many, many ages ago. I found her discoveries intriguing at least, perhaps even revolutionary at the time. Thank goodness my sister was wise enough to see through Scorpio's temptations and urge me away from the mare before her darkness began to influence me. If she had not, I may have become something far worse than Nightmare Moon. Unfortunately, sometimes I fear I was a little better than her. It was not dark magic, but my own jealousy and self-importance that led me to myself to become that. Yikes, Scuffle said, flattening his ears. Even so, at least you weren't beyond redemption. Seems like Scorpio was such bad news wherever she went, huh? Luna shrugged. Seems extremely strong-willed. I think she could be considered a good pony. Thus opinionated and very passionate, before she began to develop dark magic. Dinky, here is the first positive result of anything she has done since then. Dinky nodded.
I'll be sure to send you a letter if I find anything about my new powers that concerns me.
She asserted the monarch.
If you need Scorpio, you probably know how she thinks. That could be really useful.
Indeed, Luna agreed. Keep your true friends close, and refrain from using your dark powers recklessly. I'm sure you've already heard it many times today, but Equestria may not take kindly to a wraith, regardless of what's in her heart. Dinky glanced at herself, as if expecting her wraith form to suddenly be showing.
I'm planning to keep my true form hidden for most of the time. The average pony gets by without dark magic, so why can't I?
At the same time, you shouldn't completely ignore your gift, Luna advised. Dark magic is intricately linked with your special talent. It may certainly play a role in your destiny in the future, thus use caution. Dinky nodded gravely.
True, but don't worry. I've got my friends to keep me right on track.
Luna smiled. That, my little pony, is the best thing you can do. Events around Equestria have been reinforcing the fact, again and again in recent years, that friendship is a force that can overcome almost any trial. I'm glad you have built such strong friendships in your time here. Dinky smiled and motioned for her friends. They tried closer, and she pulled the three of them into a group hug, earning nearby identical awes from Clarity and Honeydew, and affectionate eye roll from Scuffle. Luna seemed pleased. For now, I will leave it at that, the princess declared. You forced to make your way to the train soon. I will see all of you next time. Spreading her wings, Luna silently took flight, disappearing quickly into the night sky. The four foals watched her go.
You three really will have my back in the years to come, right?
Dinky asked, stepping away from her friend's embrace. Absolutely, Clarity said eagerly. We really risked our lives for each other. Nothing could break up this friendship.
I couldn't imagine coming back here and not spending time with all of you.
Honeydew admitted softly. And you could bet with my brothers gone, I can even be a better pal next year, Scuffle assured him. Dinky blushed.
You three are the best,
she said sniffling.
Thanks, really.
Ah, don't sweat it, Dinks, Scuffle said, nuzzling the filly's side. Now to get going. We should get to the train. Hey, you four, can you wait a second? From somewhere near the castle, a familiar purple pony came galloping into the direction of the four fillies.
Hey, Sparkler,
Dinky said to the overseer, as he came to the hall in front of him.
Sorry about what happened at the ceremony. I hope you get a chance to talk to Presto.
Sparkler waved a hoof. I've got one more chance at graduation, she said dismissively. I won't waste that one, I promise. The foals began to walk up the winding path to the train station. Sparkler tagged along, talking softly. By the way, I'm really sorry about any undue stress I put you four through, she said sabrously. You were right, Dinky. It hurts to admit it. But since I wasn't really thinking for myself, the Dean was using me for her own aims. I was so convinced I was right and you were wrong that I just went for it for a while.
It's all water under your bridge now,
Dinky said happily.
There was a lot of unusual stuff going on for this year for both of us. It's behind us now, so let's move on friends, okay?
Dinky extended a hoof. Sparkler eyed it, vaguely surprised, and then gratefully took it. Friends, if our paths cross again, hopefully we can be on the same side of any issue we face. And this is why Sparkler asked Dinky to help her fix up Maud and Cranky's wedding.
I certainly will,
Dinky assured her.
and I'm glad our involvement in your life helped you find some things about yourself you've forgotten.
Sparkler nodded solemnly. I owe all of you a big thank you, really, she admitted. Dinky may have been the most direct influence, but all of you play your part. She turned to the other foals. Clarity, she began, you're a brilliant, passionate filly. I knew your sister. In some ways, you're the same, but in many, you're different. The Academy is honored to have a chance to teach you both. Clarity blushed. Honeydew, Sparkle continued, I admire your willingness to do what you need to, even if you're scared. Your friends are all, a bit brash at times, and that's not a bad thing. But the point is, I wasn't surprised when they stood up to me last night in the courtyard. But I was surprised when you did. Honeydew blinked.
You're praising me for helping you?
I'm praising you for going out of your way of your comfort zone for your friends, Sparkle explained. You're another example why I was wrong to not let other ponies affect my life. I can only hope one day I have a friend as dedicated as you are to your friends. Honeydew squeaked nervously, twisting her tail, smiling slyly. And Scuffle, I've been keeping an eye on you, Sparkle added, turning to the colt. It seemed like you were going to be a carbon copy of your brothers when this year began. Well, that hasn't been the case for months now, has it? I want to thank you, very sincerely, for being a better pony than that. I know you won't keep following bad examples. You've got the spirit of a good leader in you. Scuffle tried to act tough, puffing out of his chest as if to say, Course I do. His expression told a different story. So to all of you, I want you to know I won't forget what I've learned from ponies like you, Sparkle said. I hope you keep following your own example, because the four of you made it clear, with a fair amount of wit, a lot of heart, and a bit of hocus pocus, cue credits! There's nothing you can't accomplish. The 5 ponies arrived at the mouth of the cave and containing the train station. Sparkle nodded to each of the foals in turn. See you around, she said softly. Set an example for your classmates, you four. I expect to hear about great things from you. Dinky nodded.
Bye, Sparkler. Good luck of everything.
Sparkle nodded one final time, and then turned to the cave. Dinky and her friends turned around, gazing at the castle in the valley below. Its windows gleaming with a magical light that wasn't so different from the stars glittering above.
We sure have a lot to live up to, huh?
Dinky said quietly. We do, Clarity admitted. But we've got it handled. We're only a year into our education, and we've already overpowered the creator of dark magic. Setting a good example and living up to a few ponies' expectations should be easy peasy after that.
And we've got to teach each other to support us when it gets tough,
Honeydew said contentedly, leaning softly against Scuffle. Dinky smiled, letting her horn sparkle with a calm yellow glow.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
Slate blue, pale green, and cinnamon red glows joins Dinky's yellow. Horns lighting the way, the 4 foals descended into the cave and toward their next adventure. The end. Cue the end credits! And as for me, review time. I love it when a fic gives me so little bad stuff to talk about. I mean, I want to join in with what some of the commenters have tried to say about, oh, well, these kids weren't talking like kids. But I see it in 2 ways. One, these girls are technically tweens to teenagers. And second, a lot of their dialogue that I was reading isn't really too far off from watching one of my favorite high school animes. Or even just one of my favorite animes that happen to have magical things that happen in high school. Or even middle school. Really not too far off, so I can't really complain about that. My other complaint would be the time scale, but that only occurred when I first read it. You see, I read this fic as it was being published, chapter by chapter. And since there were a lot of delays between each chapter, I got confused as how long the time span was. I thought we were reaching November way too early. I was thinking, did we skip a few months? Just what was the terms here? But now that I was able to read it in rapid succession on a weekly basis, I was actually able to get a better connection to what the time scale was. So it made it easy for me to enjoy and relax. But let's focus on the good, which is everything else. But martial art for user. Martial art for user. Trixie, I thought we agreed. Don't interrupt me during my reviews. Yes, but we here at the studio want to give you this award. This award for what? For going through the entire written and vocal review and not making a single comparison to Harry Potter. You've probably done one thing nobody else has done throughout this entire fic. Thank you. And it's true. Well, some people would probably obviously make the big comparison. Well, it's like Harry Potter. Me, I just go, it's a school, it's magical, it's a private academy, different rules. Yeah. And thinking of the school, I do love how he goes through it and gives us the different definitions. There's some excellent world building, explanation of how magic works, even some further hints to what would happen in future episodes of the show that he didn't even suspect, like, say, Starlight being able to use the map to keep herself levitating, saying, unicorns, it would require a lot of power to do that for unicorns. Bing! Oh, look, Sparkler has hidden reserves of strength. I mean, Starlight, sorry. I loved how there was all these different explanations for how these different spells came to be. Limit was something that was easy to remember. Each one of these lessons actually did feel like you were learning along with the students. They weren't really overly complicated, and each one was paced. Also, some of the more boring classes were left out, leaving us to explore the more exciting ones and be entertained by the more interesting ones that allow us to flow better. I also loved the faculty on this. They were all very well done and very dynamic. As you could tell by the way I was able to come up with different voices for each one. They were also curiously interesting that I kind of really wanted to check out stories about each one of them. From Professor Chestnut to Professor Luster. But they weren't the real focus. But they were giving us enough time to explore each one. I also think that the characterizations of the OCs and the normal characters were done well. Twilight was in character, and so was Princess Celestia. As a matter of fact, this is kind of like how I normally like using Princess Celestia, even in my own stuff. She's a powerful goddess, to be sure. She's always there watching. However, the best time to use her is either near the end when she needs to be congratulatory, or being that little force that you know will always be behind you. She doesn't always need to have a presence to be felt. Kind of like certain other very powerful mystical beings. And I liked how she popped up here. And when she came in, you knew things was going to get real. That's how I kind of like her. And of course, Twilight was being her usual neurotic self. Also, I think Starswell was used better here than Tears of Gaia. Where in Tears of Gaia, he was barely made a presence. Starswell was shown up here as, I'm awesome. And also, I liked his explanation for staying in between worlds. Speaking of which, I'm going to be honest right now. One of the things I was expecting when we found out about that mysterious stallion, and I see that everybody else was on the same level, I really, really expected it to be Dinky's father that was saving her every single chance he got. I was kind of expecting it, so yeah, seeing Starswirl was another shock. I can't help but wonder if maybe he was reading the comments and everybody was expecting her father, that he changed it at the end to keep us shocked. Wouldn't be the first time this happened. Sometimes that's happened well, like with Monarch, and sometimes that's happened... I mean, not Monarch, that happened poorly. And sometimes it's happened well, so... Sometimes that type of thing can happen to a writer. But for the other OCs, I love the developments. Well, maybe with the exception of Frost and Scorch and Nadine, but they served their purpose. I don't think they needed to be developed. They just need to serve as the side antagonists. Much like how the threat Antares and Scorpio were always there, even though Antares had a pretty good, cool showing, as did Scorpio, both of them being intimidating and fearful villains that showed that they were always one step ahead of our heroes. And what a great selection of heroes we have, huh? I think my personal favorite was Clarity, because, well, as you tell, I was portraying her as a miniature Trixie. I loved her character development. We see her go from being just trying to, get along to just being boisterous and showing off that she's able to connect with every party on a deep personal level, showing that she has some collective insights that really help Dinky out on her journey through the story. She also proved herself to be every bit as loyal as Dash by standing by her. Heck, I know I was very happy when I saw Clarity running by, or decloaking. Clarity proved herself to be a very powerful hero, and very noble intentions. I also found Honeydew to be a kind of a cute character. While soft-spoken, much like Fluttershy, she also shows some character growth by opening up a lot more and was willing to join into the battles to help her friends, not to mention Scuffle. Yeah, I knew he was going to change, which is why I gave him this gruff voice at the beginning of the story, because I wanted to show that he was trying to imitate his brothers. Then I switched to my normal speaking voice because I wanted to show that he had changed. I like it when we see a deeper level to characters, when there's more to something to a bully than just, yeah, I'm gonna rock, I'm gonna rumble, woo! And this was no exception. Sparkler was much the same way. Despite being intimidating and this overall threat to Dinky, we could all see that there was something more to her, and, given time, she showed it. And finally, Dinky. While staying true to who she was throughout the story, we saw her grow more combative, more clever, and more skillful in her use of magic. Which was all beautifully done through the use of duels. I don't know if this was just the author growing in his use of magic duels in his writing of an exit scene, but I noticed the magic duels grew more and more intense as they moved on. We first start off with basic defense versus defense. Woo. And everybody just standing around. Then the first Frostfire Twins versus Scuffle and Honeydew became more dynamic. There was more explosions, more sights and scenes, moving right on to not only Scorpio's fight, but the beauty that is the 4-on-1 versus Sparkler. Very well done. Dynamic, fast, and engaging. All the characters moving at a pace, and the flow kept you moving. Not to mention the use of all these different various spells that shows you just what could be done in a literary medium. I also think this fic did a pretty dang good job of just keeping us moving throughout the story. Just making sure we moved at a good pace. And I think that's what this story basically gave us, was an excellent writing all the way through. Well, that was one down, that's just more to go. Next, join us tomorrow when we begin the new story. Take it away, boys. My name is Spike. I'm a writer for the Equestrian Times. This is my faithful assistant, Twilight the Dragon. Pleased to meet you. I'm going to check up on Ponyville to talk about the Summer Sun celebration. Maybe get some new interviews and maybe talk some new ponies. Also, I'm quite curious about the changing stars. Oh well. Only one way to find out, as an investigative reporter must do. So, next time, flip side. I'll see you there. See you next time.